The ink was still wet on the divorce papers. Daniel Hayes smirked, watching his worthless ex-wife Audrey walk out of his life with nothing but the clothes on her back. He'd won. He'd taken the house, the portfolio, and his own freedom. He watched from his lawyer's high-rise window, expecting her to hail a cab in the rain. But a cab didn't come. A $20 million custom-built Maybach slid to the curb. The door was opened by a chauffeur, and Audrey got in. Daniel couldn't breathe. He knew that car. He knew the obsidian bee crest on the door. It belonged to the one man who could destroy him. The meeting was a formality, a final coronation for Daniel Hayes. The room on the 48th floor of the Pendleton and Strauss law offices was a shrine to mahogany and quiet old money. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the New York skyline was sharp and cold, a mirror of Daniel's own sense of triumph. He leaned back in his leather chair, the picture of magnanimous victory. Opposite him sat his lawyer, Arthur Pendleton, a man whose smile never quite reached his eyes. And next to Arthur, small and silent, was Audrey. "Now, Audrey," Arthur began, his voice dripping with condescending empathy, "as we've discussed, Daniel has been extraordinarily generous. The settlement of $50,000, considering your lack of contribution, is a significant gesture." Daniel watched her. She was wearing a simple beige dress he'd always hated. It made her blend into the furniture. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, revealing the pale, perfect oval of her face. For 10 years that face had been his, a beautiful passive, and he had to admit, boring ornament. He had found her working in a small art gallery, a quiet girl with a mind for obscure painters. He had molded her, given her a life she could only dream of, and she had repaid him by just being there, quietly, taking up space. Now he was upgrading. Isabella was 24, a firecracker and influencer whose vibrant energy matched his own meteoric rise at Apex Innovations. He was on the cusp of closing the Project Oracle deal, a 9-figure acquisition that would make him a legend. He couldn't have a ghost for a wife. He needed a partner who shone. "Do you have any questions, Audrey?" Daniel asked, his tone that of a patient teacher. Audrey's gaze, which had been fixed on the polished table, lifted. Her eyes were a deep, unreadable gray. She didn't look at Arthur. She looked directly at Daniel. "No, Daniel, I have no questions." Her voice was clear, not weak, not trembling, just empty. It unnerved him for a split second. "Well then," Arthur slid the final document across the table. "If you'll just sign here and here." Audrey picked up the heavy gold-plated pen. Daniel watched her hand, steady, not a single tremor. She signed Audrey Caroline, her maiden name. The stroke was fluid, decisive. She hadn't been Audrey Caroline in a decade. She slid the paper back. Then she stood. She didn't cry. She didn't make a scene. She didn't plead or throw an insult. She just turned, walked to the door, and opened it. "Audrey, wait," Daniel said, annoyed. "The check. Arthur has your check." Audrey paused, her back to him. "You can keep it, Daniel. Consider it a tip for services rendered." She closed the door. The click was as soft and final as a coffin lid. Arthur Pendleton chuckled. "Fiery right at the end. Don't you worry, Daniel. Buyer's remorse. She'll be back for that check by Monday." Daniel laughed, the knot of unease dissolving. "Let her. She'll realize what she's lost." He walked to the window, the city sprawling beneath him. He was its king. He'd check his phone. Isabella had already sent him 3 suggestive selfies. This was his future. He looked down at the street 48 floors below. He saw Audrey exit the building. Her beige dress made her look like a piece of drab lint against the gray sidewalk. He saw her stop by the curb. "Come on, Audrey," he whispered, a smirk playing on his lips. "Call the Uber. Go back to whatever gallery. We'll have you." He watched, and he waited. And then it happened. It wasn't a taxi. It wasn't an Uber. It was a car that didn't so much drive as glide. A custom-built armor-plated Mercedes-Maybach Pullman S650. It was the color of a starless night, so polished it looked wet. It was a car that didn't exist for rich people. It existed for power. It pulled to a silent stop directly in front of Audrey. Daniel's breath hitched. His hand holding his phone froze. A man in a severe black suit, not a driver, a security professional, exited the passenger side, scanned the street, and then walked to the rear door. He opened it for Audrey. Audrey, without looking back, without a moment's hesitation, stooped gracefully and disappeared inside. The man closed the door. He got back in the car. The car pulled seamlessly into traffic and was gone. Daniel stood frozen. The blood had drained from his face. "What is it?" Arthur asked, coming up behind him. Daniel couldn't speak. He just pointed a trembling finger at the street below. The car." "What a nice limo. Maybe she has a richer friend than you thought." "That's not a limo, you idiot," Daniel hissed, his voice cracking. "That's a Blackwood vehicle." Arthur's smugness evaporated. "Blackwood, as in Damien Blackwood." "I know the crest." Daniel whispered, the triumphant day turning to sheer cold horror. "I've only seen it in pictures. The obsidian bee on the hubcaps. That was his personal car." Damien Blackwood, the reclusive mythical billionaire. The kingmaker. The man whose firm Blackwood Capital was the sole investor Daniel had been courting for Project Oracle. The man who never appeared in public, who was rumored to control half of Wall Street from a shadow. Why, how his worthless ex-wife, his boring beige Audrey. She hadn't just left him. She had been extracted. And as the Maybach disappeared around the corner, Daniel Hayes was hit with a terrifying, gut-wrenching realization. He hadn't won. He had just made the single biggest mistake of his life. The silence in the lawyer's office was absolute. The only sound was the faint whoosh of the building's climate control. "Daniel, are you all right?" Arthur asked, his voice now laced with genuine concern. This wasn't part of the victory lap. Daniel stumbled back from the window, his $3,000 Italian suit suddenly feeling like a cheap costume. He collapsed into the chair he had only minutes before occupied like a throne. "Get me a drink." "Daniel, it's 11 a.m. I don't care if it's dawn. Get me a scotch, Arthur." Daniel roared, the mask of the cool executive shattering. Arthur, shaken, fumbled with a crystal decanter on the credenza. He poured a heavy measure of Macallan 25. Daniel seized the glass and downed half of it, the expensive liquid burning a trail down his throat. "It's a mistake," Daniel muttered, more to himself than to Arthur. "It has to be. A coincidence. Maybe she's a caterer, working a party for him. Something. Caterers don't get picked up by the personal S650 Pullman, Daniel," Arthur said grimly, his legal mind already calculating the new terrifying variables. "Those cars are for assets. Or family." "She's not an asset." Daniel slammed the glass down, scotch sloshing onto the mahogany. She's nothing. She reads poetry. She looks at paint." He was breathing heavily, his mind racing. "She was cheating. That's it. All this time. The quiet mousy act. She was sleeping with Damien Blackwood." A wave of nausea hit him. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the scale of it. He had been cheated on not with a tennis pro or a fellow banker, but with a god of their universe. The humiliation was acidic. "If she was," Arthur said slowly, sinking into his own chair, "then our generous settlement is an insult. A $50,000 tip, Daniel. If she is with Blackwood, she could have taken you for everything. The house, the portfolio, half of your future earnings from Apex." "But she signed," Daniel stammered. "She took nothing. Why would she do that?" "People with Blackwood's kind of power don't need to fight over scraps, Daniel," Arthur said, his face pale. "They don't take the house. They buy the block. They don't take your portfolio. They short your company." That last word hit Daniel like a physical blow. Apex. Project Oracle. Arthur whispered, connecting the dots. The deal you're presenting next week, the one you need Blackwood Capital to fund. He's the sole investor, Daniel said, his voice a hoarse whisper. It's all him. He's coming to the presentation. Tuesday. He's supposed to be there. And you just divorced the woman who is, apparently, his new protégé mistress. Arthur stood and began to pace. Daniel, this is bad. This is career-ending bad. He's not coming to see your presentation. He's coming to watch you burn. Daniel's mind flashed through the past few months. Audrey's increasing detachment. Her quiet nights spent in her study, which he'd assumed were for art history. Her sudden lack of interest in fighting. He had seen it all as weakness, as her resigned acceptance of her own Irela Caroline. He had been a fool. A blind, arrogant fool. No. Daniel said, a new desperate energy surging through him. No, I won't let her. I won't let him. He pulled out his phone. His new girlfriend Isabella was calling. He stared at her smiling, vapid face on the screen and hit decline. Arthur, Daniel said, his voice cold and clipped. I need everything you have on Audrey. No, not you. I need a real investigator. I want to know where she's been, who she's been talking to, what she's been doing for the last 6 months. I want her phone records, her bank statements, her everything. I need to know what she has on me. Daniel, that's highly illegal. We've just divorced. Her records are private. Do you have a PI or not, Arthur? Daniel snapped. A discreet one. I don't care what it costs. I need to know what I'm walking into on Tuesday. Arthur hesitated, then nodded. I know a man. Ex-Mossad. Very expensive. Very thorough. But Daniel, what if the answer is just, she's with him? What's your play? Daniel straightened his tie, the motion jerky. He was a shark. He'd always been a shark. He just hadn't realized he was swimming in an ocean with a leviathan. My play, Daniel said, his eyes glittering with a toxic mix of fear and rage, is Project Oracle. That project is flawless. It's my masterpiece. It's worth $1 billion easy. Blackwood is a businessman. He's not going to walk away from a $1 billion idea because his new girlfriend has a vendetta against me. He wants to make money. I'm going to show him the money. He finished his scotch. I'm going to nail that presentation on Tuesday. I'm going to nail it so hard Blackwood will have to respect me. He'll see that whatever services Audrey is providing, I am the one who can actually make him rich. Arthur looked at him unconvinced. And Audrey, what if she's in the meeting? Daniel's face darkened. She won't be. She's a gallery girl. This is way over her head. She's a temporary amusement for him. By Tuesday he'll be bored and I'll be the one signing the real deal. He strode out of the office, his confidence a brittle, hollow shell. He spent the weekend in a state of controlled panic. He told Isabella he had to work, that the Oracle deal was at a critical phase. In reality, he was locked in his penthouse reviewing his presentation, but he couldn't focus. Every slide, every data point, every projection was haunted. He kept seeing Audrey's face. Not the mousy beige woman from the lawyer's office, but the woman who had gotten into that car. A woman, he realized with a sickening lurch, he had never known at all. On Monday afternoon, his private investigator called. Mr. Hayes. The man's voice was gravelly accented. I have the information you wanted. What is it? Daniel said, pacing his living room. It's complicated. The woman, Audrey Caroline. She's a ghost. What do you mean, a ghost? I was married to her for 10 years. I mean, the PI said that for the last 6 months she has no digital footprint. Her credit cards show minimal activity, groceries, gas. Her phone records show one friend, a Sarah, and her mother. Nothing. But 3 months ago she opened a high-security encrypted email account, and she's been communicating with one other account. Whose? Daniel demanded. The account is a dead end. encrypted, routed through 3 continents. But the server it's on, it's a private server, registered to Blackwood Capital. Daniel's blood ran cold. So, they were talking. For months. That's not the half of it, the PI said. You asked what she was doing. I managed to get access to her study. You were right, she wasn't having a physical affair. No hotels, no dinners. She was working. Working on what? Her stupid paintings? No, Mr. Hayes. She's been running algorithms, highly complex predictive market models. I'm talking high-frequency trading level. I've sent the files to you. They're dense. But one file name kept popping up, over and over. A master file. Daniel's laptop pinged. A secure file had arrived. He opened it. His heart stopped. It wasn't a file. It was a folder, full of data projections, white papers, all his work, all his research. What's the file name? Daniel whispered, already knowing the answer. Project Oracle, the PI said. Looks like your wife was very interested in your work. Or maybe, the PI added, it was the other way around. Daniel hung up the phone. He stared at the files. They weren't his files. They were her files. The ones he had found on her laptop 6 months ago. The ones he'd thought were her little hobby. The complex equations she was doodling with. He hadn't developed Project Oracle. He had stolen it. He had stolen it from his wife, a woman he thought was a simpleton. And now he was scheduled to present that stolen work to the one man in the world who knew he was a fraud. To understand the bomb that was about to detonate in Daniel Hayes's life, you have to understand the woman he had just discarded. Audrey Caroline was not a gallery girl. She was a ghost. She held a first from MIT in applied mathematics and a PhD from Caltech in quantitative financial modeling. By age 25, she was the youngest quant on the most ruthless trading floor in Chicago, building algorithms, so predictive they were borderline clairvoyant. She was Evie, a legend in the making, a girl who saw the Matrix, and she was burningly, terrifyingly lonely. Then she met Daniel Hayes at a fundraiser. He was handsome, ambitious, and utterly normal. He didn't see her as a brain. He saw her as beautiful. He was dazzled by her looks, not her mind. For Audrey, who had lived her entire life feeling like a freakish intellect in a world of mortals, this was intoxicating. He asked her to marry him. He said, I want to take care of you. I'm the provider. You don't need to work on that brutal trading floor. Just be with me. We can have a real life. And Audrey, exhausted from a world that tried to quantify her, agreed. She ghosted her old life. She retired at 28. She became Mrs. Audrey Hayes. She took up art history. She ran charities. She learned to be beige. But the engine in her mind never ever shut off. Their marriage for the first few years was stable. Daniel loved showing off his brilliant, beautiful wife. But he only wanted the beautiful part. The death by 1,000 cuts began slowly. It was the dinner parties where she'd try to engage with his apex colleagues about market volatility. Audrey, don't bore them with your old war stories, Daniel would laugh, patting her hand. Tell them about the new Picasso exhibit you saw. It was the nights he'd come home stressed about a deal. She'd look at his data and say, Daniel, your risk model is flawed. You're not accounting for the stochastic volatility in the derivative markets. He'd kiss her forehead. That's why I'm the VP, honey. You just worry about making the reservation at Per Se. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a painting. So Audrey retreated. She went back to her hobby. In the study he'd built for her, surrounded by art books, she assembled a rogue server. She created a new pseudonym, Caroline, and began posting complex theoretical models on invitation-only high-level financial forums. She wasn't trading. She was creating. She built models for pure intellectual sport. She built one that could predict with 98% accuracy the success or failure of tech mergers based on satellite data of their parking lots. She built another that could track the flow of dark money through cryptocurrency. Her Caroline persona became a myth, a ghost in the machine that the titans of finance men like Damian Blackwood whispered about. They all tried to find Caroline. They all failed. Then about a year ago, Daniel started talking about Project Oracle. He was excited, more animated than he'd been in years. Apex was developing a new AI-driven logistics platform. It's the future, Audrey. It will change global shipping. He was, as usual, completely wrong. He was looking at the application. Audrey, with a few glances at his unguarded files, saw the engine. The AI was predictive, yes, but its true genius lay in its ability to analyze and predict supply chain failures before they happened. It wasn't a logistics tool. It was the most powerful market hedging weapon ever created. "It's not about shipping, Daniel," she told him one night. "It's about data. You could use this to short the commodities market. You could hedge against entire national economies. It's a weapon." Daniel had laughed, genuinely laughed. "A weapon? Oh, Audrey, that is so dramatic. It's a faster way to get sneakers from China. It's adorable you're trying to help, though." He had patted her on the head. That was the night the marriage died. That was the night Audrey Caroline the Quant woke up. She began her own work. She took the core code of Project Oracle, the part Daniel didn't even understand, and she built the real version. She fed it data he didn't know existed. She ran models he couldn't comprehend. She called her secret version Oracle Prime. 6 months ago, she discovered two things in one day. First, she saw an email on Daniel's laptop. He was starting an affair with an influencer named Isabella. He had sent a text to his friend Marcus, finally trading in the old reliable sedan for a new sports car. Time to upgrade. Second, she discovered he had been in her study. He had found her Oracle Prime files, and he had copied them. He hadn't just stolen her life's work. He'd done it badly. He had copied the top-level folders. He hadn't seen the subdirectories, the root-level failsafes, the true key to the algorithm. He had stolen a high-performance engine but had no idea how to drive it. He was about to present a Ferrari as if it were a Toyota, and in doing so he was going to crash it. And she saw his plan. He was going to present this brilliant work to potential investors. And at the top of the list, the whale was Blackwood Capital. Audrey knew Daniel. He'd used the success of this deal to finally divorce her. He'd cast her aside the boring sedan and ride off into the sunset with his new sports car and her genius. She looked at herself in the mirror, the beige dress, the quiet face, the trophy wife. "No," she whispered. "The trophy is the one who wins." She was Caroline. She was the ghost in the machine. And she knew exactly one man who might be able to appreciate the machine she had built. She didn't try to call. She didn't go through lawyers. She did what she did best. She hacked him. It took her 72 hours, bypassing the most secure private network on Earth. She didn't breach his firewalls to steal. She breached them to deliver. She sent a single encrypted message to the personal terminal of Damian Blackwood. "Subject: your oracle is false. Body: Mr. Blackwood. You are being courted by Apex Innovations for Project Oracle. The man presenting Daniel Hayes is a fraud. The data he is presenting is stolen. It is also incomplete. He is holding a child's drawing. I am holding the masterpiece. Attached is a single data string. It's the predictive outcome for the Singapore maritime congestion 30 days out. Apex's model will tell you 5% disruption. My model tells you 38% disruption triggered by a labor strike in Jakarta that hasn't happened yet. You'll know which one is right in 10 days. When you do, you'll know who I am." Caroline. 10 days later, the Jakarta port strike crippled the Singapore Channel. The shipping market went into total chaos. Blackwood Capital, by shorting the right stocks, made $400 million in a single day. 2 hours after that, Audrey's encrypted phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She answered. "Ms. Caroline," a deep resonant voice said. "This is Damian Blackwood. I've been looking for you for a very long time. Tell me, what do you want?" Audrey looked around the sterile, beautiful house that had been her cage. "I want," she said, her voice steel, to be free. "And then I want to show you what Project Oracle really looks like." Damian Blackwood did not do meetings. He did summonses, but not with Audrey. "I can't meet," she had told him on that first call. "My husband is controlling. He tracks my movements." "He tracks your movements?" Blackwood had said, the disdain in his voice palpable. "But he does not. I take it track your mind." "He doesn't even know it exists," Audrey replied. So they began to talk. Every night after Daniel was asleep or out with his new girlfriend, Audrey would descend to her study. Their video calls were encrypted, routed through a quantum network that left no trace. The first call was an interview. Damian Blackwood appeared on her screen. He was not what she expected. He wasn't a slick, suited banker. He was in his late 50s with a salt and pepper beard and the intense, piercing eyes of a hawk. He wore a simple black cashmere sweater and was sitting in what looked like a library shelves, buckling under the weight of books. "Caroline," he said, a small, rare smile playing on his lips. "So the ghost has a face. And what a face." "Mr. Blackwood," Audrey said, all business. "I assume my model was correct." "It wasn't just correct, Ms. Caroline. It was prophetic. You didn't just predict the strike. You predicted the ripple. You saw the wave under the wave. I've had teams of analysts, PhDs from every ivy trying to build what you just gave me for free." "How?" So, she showed him. For the next 2 hours, Audrey Caroline, the gallery girl, took the most powerful man in finance on a guided tour of Oracle Prime. She didn't just show him the data. She showed him the architecture, the beauty of the code, the elegance of the machine she had built in secret. She explained that Daniel's stolen model was a blunt instrument. "He thinks it's a faster way to move boxes." She explained, her fingers flying across her keyboard, bringing up lines of code. "He doesn't see the human element. His model predicts logistics. Mine," she paused, "mine predicts chaos." She showed him how Oracle Prime could analyze sentiment from regional news, cross-reference it with weather patterns, and factor in labor law loopholes to predict to the day where the next supply chain crisis would emerge. "It's not just a logistics tool, Mr. Blackwood," she said, her eyes burning with an intensity he had only ever seen in himself. "It's a global economic early warning system. In the right hands, it could stabilize markets. In the wrong hands, or in Daniel's case, in incompetent hands, it could break them." Damian Blackwood was silent for a full minute. He was staring at her, but he was seeing something else. He was seeing the future. "You're not a quant, Ms. Caroline," he said, his voice soft. "You're an artist, a composer. This is a symphony." "It's a weapon, Mr. Blackwood," Audrey said, repeating the words she'd once said to her husband. "And my husband is about to hand it, or the broken parts of it, over to you." "No, he's not," Damian said. "He's about to present it. He wants my money. He wants my validation." "What are you going to do?" "I," Damian said, leaning forward, "am going to attend that presentation. I'm going to sit in the front row. And I am going to let him present his child's drawing." "And then," Audrey asked, "and then you are going to walk in, and you are going to show them the masterpiece." Audrey's breath caught. I can't. I'm his wife. It's messy." "No," Damian said, his voice firm. "You were his wife. This is not a domestic dispute, Audrey. This is a corporate extraction. You are my asset. You are perhaps the most valuable asset I have ever encountered, and I do not leave my assets in enemy territory." This was the plan they forged in the digital darkness. Phase 1. The divorce. "You need to be clean," Damian had insisted. "He will try to claim your work as marital property. We must sever the tie before we strike. Give him everything. Take nothing. A judge will see a simple, amicable split. Let him think he's won. Let him sign his own death warrant. Phase 2. The extraction. The day you sign my car will be waiting. You will not go to a hotel. You will not go to a friend's. You will be brought to my private estate. My lawyers will be there. You will sign a new contract, not as an employee, as a partner. Phase 3. The presentation. Daniel Hayes must be allowed to fail on the biggest possible stage. He must be exposed not as a bad husband, but as a fraud. Your Greek Caroline is personal. Mine, Damien's eyes glinted, is with incompetence. I cannot abide incompetence. For the next 2 months, Audrey played the part of the grieving broken wife. She let Daniel be generous. She agreed to all his terms. She let him and his lawyer Arthur Pendleton steamroll her. She packed her beige clothes. All the while she was refining Oracle Prime. She was working with Damien's team, integrating his vast data infrastructure with her revolutionary engine. The day of the divorce, she walked into that law office knowing exactly what was waiting for her. When she signed Audrey Caroline, it was the resurrection of a ghost. When she walked out of that building, she wasn't walking away from a marriage. She was walking toward her throne. As she slid into the buttery leather of the Maybach, the world went silent. The soundproofing was absolute. The chauffeur didn't speak. He simply handed her a chilled bottle of water and an encrypted tablet. A moment later, a video call connected. It was Damien. "It's done," he asked. Audrey took a long, slow sip of water. She looked up at the 48th floor window where she could just make out the tiny, furious silhouette of her ex-husband. "Yes," Audrey said, a small, cold smile touching her lips for the first time in a decade. "The asset is secure. Phase 2 is complete." "Good," Damien replied. "Welcome to the game, Ms. Caroline. Now let's prepare for Tuesday. It's time to show the world what a real Oracle looks like." Tuesday. The Apex Innovations boardroom. The air was electric. This wasn't just a presentation. It was an event. The entire board was present. The CEO of Apex, a nervous man named Jacobs, was sweating through his suit. And in the front row, sitting alone, was Damien Blackwood. He had arrived with no entourage, no lawyers. He just appeared. He sat impassive, radiating an aura of such absolute power that everyone in the room automatically lowered their voices. Daniel Hayes stood at the front, a $10 Dior suit, a Patek Philippe on his wrist. He was a portrait of success. But it was a lie. He hadn't slept in 72 hours. He'd been alternating between panic attacks and fits of desperate, furious bravado. His investigator's report lay in his briefcase like a bomb. He knew she wrote it. He knew Blackwood knew. But what could he do? Back out. Admit he was a fraud. No. His only play was to push forward. His only hope was that his delivery was so convincing, so charismatic, that Blackwood would... what? Forgive him. See him as the real talent. It was a desperate gamble, but it was the only one he had. "Gentlemen," Daniel began, his voice surprisingly steady, "and Mr. Blackwood, we are here today to talk about the future. Not just the future of Apex, but the future of global trade. We are here for Project Oracle." He clicked the remote. The presentation began. For the next 45 minutes, Daniel gave the performance of his life. He was charming. He was dynamic. He moved around the stage with an energy he'd borrowed from a dozen TED Talks. He presented the stolen data. He showed the incomplete projections. He laid out the flawed business model. He knew it was flawed. He knew it was stolen. He was a con artist tap dancing on a landmine. He watched Damien Blackwood's face. Nothing. Not a flicker. The man was carved from granite. Daniel finally reached his crescendo. "And so, with a modest $500 million investment," he concluded, breathless, Project Oracle will not just put Apex at the top of the S&P 500. It will make us the standard, the Oracle, the company that sees the future, he finished. There was a beat of silence, then polite, nervous applause from the board. CEO Jacob stood up, wringing his hands. Thank you, Daniel. A truly visionary presentation. He turned to the silent figure in the front row. Mr. Blackwood, your thoughts. Damian Blackwood stood up, slowly. He didn't look at the screen. He looked directly at Daniel. Mr. Hayes. Blackwood's voice was quiet, but it filled the room, silencing every rustle of paper. That was a presentation. Daniel's stomach did a slow, painful flip. It was competent, Blackwood continued, walking slowly toward the front. Polished, full of very impressive-sounding words. A competent analysis for a first-year intern. The air was sucked out of the room. CEO Jacobs looked like he was going to be sick. I don't understand, Daniel stammered. No, Blackwood said, you don't. That's the problem. Your projections are wrong. Your risk model is a joke. Your entire premise is built on a house of cards. But the data, Daniel protested, his voice rising in panic. The data is sound. The data is stolen, Blackwood said, his voice dropping to an icy whisper. And you didn't even steal it correctly. Daniel went white. I resent that implication. You resent it. Blackwood chuckled, a cold, dangerous sound. You, Mr. Hayes, are a common thief, a clumsy one. You broke into a vault and you stole the fake jewels left on display, all while the real treasure was in a safe you didn't even know existed. This is an outrage, Daniel blustered, looking to the board for help. They all avoided his gaze. No, Blackwood said. This is a correction. You see, I'm not here to invest in Project Oracle. I'm here to meet its actual architect. He turned and nodded to the boardroom doors. The doors opened, and Audrey Caroline walked in. She was not the beige ghost. She was a supernova. She wore a custom-tailored razor-sharp suit in a deep midnight blue. Her hair was down, falling in sleek professional waves. Her eyes were clear and cold. She walked in on a pair of sky-high Louboutins that clicked with the authority of a judge's gavel. She was flanked by two of Blackwood's top lawyers. Daniel Hayes looked at her, and for the first time he saw her. Not his wife, not an ornament. He saw the Ph.D. from Caltech. He saw the ghost Caroline. He saw the woman who had just in the span of a week undone his entire life. Audrey. He breathed the word, a curse. She didn't look at him. She walked directly to the head of the table. Hello, Daniel, she said, her voice amplified by the room's high-tech acoustics. It was calm, cool, and utterly devastating. She turned to the stunned board. Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Audrey Caroline. For the last 10 years, I was what you would call a silent partner in Mr. Hayes's life. What he just presented to you was a crude summary of my early unpublished research. She pulled a small, sleek tablet from her briefcase and plugged it into the main console. Daniel's presentation vanished. It was replaced by an interface so complex and beautiful it looked alive. What he calls Project Oracle is a toy, Audrey said, her voice cutting through the silence. What I call Oracle Prime, she tapped a single key, is the real thing. The main screen exploded with data. Not just shipping lanes. It showed global weather patterns, political unrest, social media sentiment, and commodities futures, all swirling into a single predictive algorithm. Your Oracle predicts a 2% dip in coffee futures next month, Audrey said, addressing the screen but destroying Daniel. Mine predicts the collapse of the entire crop in Vietnam due to a combination of a late monsoon-driven fungus and a new regional shipping tariff. She looked at the board. Mr. Hayes is asking for $500 million to build a faster rowboat. She paused. am offering you a nuclear submarine." Daniel was sputtering. She's lying. It's marital property. She stole my idea. Tell them, Audrey. Tell them you were just helping me." Audrey finally turned to him. Her face was not angry. It was impossibly worse. It was pitying. "You're right about one thing, Daniel," she said softly. "It is about property, which is why I had my lawyers file the patents for Oracle Prime under my maiden name, Audrey Caroline, 6 months ago, before I even filed for divorce." She gestured to one of her lawyers who placed a thick-bound document on the table. "I also have a signed notarized confession from your friend Marcus at the IT desk detailing exactly how you paid him to access my private research from my home server. He was, it turns out, quite willing to trade his testimony for immunity from the wire fraud charges." Daniel Hayes's legs gave out. He grabbed the lectern to hold himself up. He was done. He was in one clean, brilliant, and devastating move. Executed. The boardroom, which had been silent with shock, erupted into chaos. CEO Jacobs was the first to speak, his face a mottled purple. "Daniel, is this true?" Daniel couldn't form words. He just stared at Audrey, his mind a howling void. "It is—" Damian Blackwood's voice cut through the noise. "And frankly, Mr. Jacobs, your company's lack of due diligence is appalling." Blackwood turned his attention to the board. "Blackwood Capital is as of this moment withdrawing all interest in Apex Innovations. Your stock will be worthless by lunch." Panic. Pure unadulterated panic. "Wait!" Jacobs shouted, lunging forward. "Please, Mr. Blackwood, Ms. Caroline, we didn't know. We can fix this. Daniel, you're fired. You're fired. Security." 2 burly security guards who had been standing discreetly by the door moved toward Daniel. "There's no need for that," Audrey said, her voice calm and commanding. Every eye snapped to her. "The issues at Apex are not limited to Mr. Hayes. Your entire R&D division has been chasing a ghost while your top leadership was at best asleep at the wheel." "She's right," Blackwood added, a predator toying with its food. "However, Ms. Caroline and I are not ungenerous." He and Audrey shared a look, not of lovers, but of co-conspirators, of equals. "Blackwood Capital," Damian announced, "is not investing in Apex Innovations as it's currently managed." The board visibly wilted. "Instead, we are making a $5 billion tender offer for a new independent venture, to be headed and majority owned by Ms. Audrey Caroline." He let that sink in. A $5 billion offer. This new venture, Caroline Blackwood Analytics, will be the sole proprietor of the Oracle Prime technology. Audrey continued, picking up the thread. "We will be launching in 90 days. But that's our IP, Jacobs protested weakly. "Is it?" Audrey's lawyer stepped forward. "Our patents predate Mr. Hayes's work by 6 months. We have a clear case of intellectual property theft. We could sue Apex Innovations into oblivion. The damages would be catastrophic." "Or," Damian Blackwood said, "there's another path." He looked at the board. "We will make you a one-time offer. We will acquire your failed Project Oracle division, your engineers, your data, your infrastructure for the generous sum of 10 cents on the dollar." That's robbery," a board member squeaked. "No," Audrey said. "It's a lifeline. We get the engineers we would have hired anyway. You get a small, much-needed cash infusion, and most importantly, you avoid a public, brutal, and bank-breaking lawsuit that will expose your entire leadership team as incompetent frauds. You'll be saved. Barely." Damian Blackwood smiled. "It's a good deal. Take it." The board was a sea of defeated faces. They knew. They were trapped. Jacobs looked at the guards, then at Daniel. "Get him out of here." Daniel was frozen. The guards grabbed his arms. "No, you can't, Audrey. Please, don't do this." He was being dragged out, his $10,000 suit crumpled, his face a mask of pathetic terror. I love you. I'm sorry, I'll do anything. Audrey Caroline watched him, her ex-husband. The man who had dismissed her cheated on her and tried to steal her genius. She watched him being dragged past the water cooler he'd once boasted at. She watched as his new life, Isabella, the new car, the adulation, all evaporated in an instant. He was at the door. He gave one last desperate cry. Audrey! She looked at him, and she said nothing. She simply turned back to the board, her expression unreadable. Now, gentlemen, let's talk about the terms of your surrender. Daniel Hayes's screams echoed down the hall as the boardroom doors slid silently shut, sealing his fate and her future. His new girlfriend Isabella, who had been waiting in the lobby to celebrate his big win with a weekend in St. Bart's, saw him being hauled out by security. She saw the tears, the disheveled suit, the sheer animal panic in his eyes. She quietly slipped her phone from her purse, blocked his number, and called a new Uber to a different billionaire's party she'd been invited to. Daniel was alone, utterly and completely. He was the one left with nothing. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. The Wall Street Journal headline read, "The Apex Collapse, a Worthless Wife, a Stolen Oracle, and the Rise of Caroline Blackwood." The story was brutal. It detailed with leaks from a dozen terrified Apex employees how Daniel Hayes had not only been a fraud, but an incompetent one. He was a laughingstock, a cautionary tale. Apex Innovation stock lost 80% of its value in a single day. By the end of the week, the board had accepted the lifeline from Caroline Blackwood Analytics. 6 months later, the cover of Forbes magazine. The title, The Ghost and the King. It was a picture of Audrey Caroline and Damian Blackwood. They were not posing together. They were standing on opposite sides of a vast glass-walled office, overlooking all of Manhattan. Damian was in the background in shadow watching. Audrey was at the front in the light. She was looking directly at the camera. Her expression was not smiling. It was focused. It was the look of a person who does not play the game, but defines it. Caroline Blackwood Analytics was the single most valuable private company in the world. Oracle Prime hadn't just predicted the market, it was moving it. Audrey had used it to predict and in doing so, help mitigate a global famine by rerouting food supply chains 3 months before a drought hit. She wasn't just a CEO, she was a global force. Her life was now a blur of private jets, secure compounds, and meetings that decided the fates of nations. She had become in every sense the power that Daniel had only ever pretended to be, and Daniel Hayes lived in a nondescript one-bedroom apartment in Queens. The penthouse was gone. The Patek was gone. The suits were gone. He was drowning in lawsuits. Apex was suing him for fraud. Marcus, the IT guy, was suing him for coercion. Audrey had, in a single final cutting move, sued him for the theft and commercial use of her intellectual property. She didn't ask for money. She asked for a judgment. He was unemployable. The name Daniel Hayes was a poison pill in the financial world. He was a consultant, which meant he spent his days sending out resumes under assumed names, all of which were immediately flagged. He was a ghost, a real one. One rainy November afternoon, Daniel was buying instant noodles at a corner bodega. He was wearing an old stained coat. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. He walked out onto the street, fumbling with his change, and a car slid to a stop in front of him. It wasn't a Maybach. It was a custom-built bulletproof Rolls-Royce Phantom. The license plate just read Caroline. The back window lowered. Audrey was inside. She was on a video call talking in rapid-fire French to someone on her screen. She looked up, her eyes scanning the street, and she saw him. She saw the noodles. She saw the stained coat. She saw the shell of the man she had married. Daniel's heart leaped. He saw an opening, a chance. Audrey! He stumbled forward, rain plastering his thin hair to his scalp. Audrey, please wait. The car didn't move. She was looking at him, just looking. Audrey, I'm so sorry. he begged, his voice cracking. I didn't know. I swear. I didn't know what you were. I was an idiot, I was. I was nothing. Please, Audrey, I have nothing. I'm starving. Audrey continued to look at him. Her face, which had launched 1,000 ships, was still. She felt nothing. Not anger, not revenge, not even satisfaction. Just an absence. She finally spoke. Her voice, clear and quiet through the armored glass, cut him to the bone. That was always the problem, Daniel. He stopped. What problem? You just didn't know. She pressed a button. The window began to rise. No, wait, he shrieked, banging on the glass. Audrey, help me, for God's sake, help me, I'm your husband. No, Audrey said to herself as the glass sealed him out. You're not. She turned to her driver. To the heliport, James. We're opening the Singapore office. I want to be in the air in 10. The Rolls-Royce pulled away from the curb, its motion as smooth and silent as a shark. Daniel Hayes was left on the sidewalk in the rain, clutching his instant noodles. He watched the car disappear, a black speck in a sea of yellow cabs. He was the one left on the curb. He was the one who was worthless. He was the one left without a word, while she, the ghost he had tried to erase, went on to rule the world he had tried to claim. And just like that, Audrey Caroline didn't just get revenge. She became the power. Daniel thought he was divorcing a mouse. He didn't realize he was unchaining a dragon. A story that proves the best revenge isn't just living well, it's building an empire, and the person everyone underestimates is often the one holding all the cards. What did you think of Audrey's ultimate power move? Do you think Daniel got what he truly deserved, or was Audrey too cold in that final scene? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love this story of justice and a trophy wife turning the tables, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss another story of sweet, sweet revenge.